3. Victor Maurel. Mind is everything. Mr. James Huneker, in one of his series of articles entitled With the Immortals in the New York World, thus, in his inimitable way characterizes Victor Maurel. I don't suppose there is to be found in musical annals such diversity of aptitudes as that displayed by this French baritone. Is there an actor on any stage today who can portray both the grossness of Falstaff and the subtlety of Iago? Making allowance for the different art medium that the singing actor must work in, and despite the larger curves of operatic pose and gesture, Maurel kept astonishingly near to the characters he assumed. He was Shakespearean. His Falstaff was the most wonderful I ever saw. Victor Maurel. And then Iago. In the Maurel conception, Othello's ancient was not painted black and black, the heart of darkness, but with many nuances, many gradations. He was economical of gesture, playing on the jealous Moor as plays a skillfully handled bow upon a finely attuned violin. His was truly an objective characterization. His Don Giovanni was broadly designed. He was the aristocrat to the life, courtly, brave, amorous, intriguing, cruel, superstitious, and quick to take offense. In his best estate, the drinking song was sheer virtuosity. Suffice to add that Verdi entrusted to him the task of originating two such widely sundered roles as Iago and Falstaff. An extraordinary artist. One evening we were discussing the merits of various famous singers of the past and present. My friend is an authority whose opinion I greatly respect. He is not only a singer himself, but is rapidly becoming a singing master of renown. After we had conferred for a long time, my friend summed it all up with the remark, "You know who, in my opinion, is the greatest, the dean of them all, a past master of the art of song, Victor Maurel." Did I not know? In times gone by had we not discussed by the hour every phase of Maurel's mastery of voice and action? Did we not together listen to that voice and watch with breathless interest his investiture of Don Giovanni, in the golden days when Lilli Lehmann and the Duresques took the other parts? Was there ever a more elegant courtly Don, a greater Falstaff, a more intriguing Iago? In those youthful days, my friend's greatest ambition was to be able to sing and act like Maurel. To this end he labored unceasingly. Second only to this aim was another, to know the great baritone personally, to become his friend, to discuss the finest issues of art with him, to consult him and have the benefit of his experience. The consummation of this desire has been delayed for years, but it is one of the all things which will surely come to him who waits. Maurel is now once more on American soil, and doubtless intends remaining for a considerable period. My friend is also established in the metropolis. The two have met, not only once, but many times. Indeed, they have become fast friends. "I will take you to him," promised friend Jacques, knowing my desire to meet the grand old man, "but don't ask for too many of his opinions about singers, as he does not care to be quoted." Late one afternoon we arrived at his residence. At the moment he was in his music room, where, for the last hour he had been singing Falstaff. If we could only have been hidden away in some quiet corner to listen. He came running down the stairway with almost the agility of a boy, coming to meet us with simple dignity and courtesy. After the first greetings were over, we begged permission to examine the many paintings which met the eye everywhere. There was a large panel facing us, representing a tall transparent vase, holding a careless bunch of summer flowers, very artistically handled. Near it hung an out-of-door sketch, a garden path leading into the green. Other bits of landscape still life and portraits made up the collection. They had all been painted by the same artist, none other than Maurel himself. As we examined the flower panel, he came and stood by us. "Painting is a great art," he said, "an art which requires profound study. I have been a close student of this art for many years and love it more and more. Maurel aims now to express himself through the art of color and form, as he has always done through voice and gesture, remarked my friend. Art is the highest means of expression, went on the master, whether through music, painting, sculpture, architecture, or the theater. The effort to express myself through another art medium, painting, has long been a joy to me. I have studied with no teacher but myself, but I have learned from all the great masters. They have taught me everything. He then led the way to his music room on the floor above. Here were more paintings, many rare pieces of furniture, and his piano. A fine portrait of Verdi, with an affectionate autograph, stood on a table. One of Ambrose Thomas, likewise inscribed, hung near. A serious man, almost austere, said Maurel, regarding the portrait of Verdi thoughtfully, but one of the greatest masters of all time. Praying us to be seated, he placed himself on an ottoman before us. The talk easily drifted into the subject of the modern operatic stage and modern operas of the Italian school, in which one is so often tempted to shout rather than sing. The hero of Mozart's Don Giovanni, who could sing his music as perhaps no one else has ever done, would not be likely to have much patience with the modern style of explosive vocal utterance. How do you preserve your voice and your repertoire? I questioned. Maurel gazed before him thoughtfully. It is entirely through the mind that I keep both. I know so exactly how to produce tone qualities that if I recall those sensations which accompany tone production, I can induce them at will. How do we make tones, sing an aria, impersonate a role? Is not all done with the mind, with thought? I must think the tone before I produce it. Before I sing it, I must mentally visualize the character and determine how I will represent it, before I attempt it. I must identify myself with the character I am to portray before I can make it live. Does not then all come from thinking from thought? Again, I can think out the character and make a mental picture of it for myself, but how shall I project it for others to see? I have to convince myself first that I am that character. I must identify myself with it. Then I must convince those who hear me that I am really that character. Maurel rose and moved to the center of the room. I am to represent some character, Amonasro, let us say. I must present the captive king, bound with chains and brought before his captors. I must feel with him, if I am really going to represent him. I must believe myself bound and a prisoner. Then I must, through pose and action, through expression of face, gesture, voice, everything, I must make this character real to the audience. And as we looked, he assumed the pose of the man in chains, his hands seemed tied, his body bent, his expression one in which anger and revenge mingled. In effect, he was for the moment Amonasro. I have only made you see my mental concept of Amonasro. If I have once thoroughly worked out a conception, made it my own, then it is mine. I can create it at any moment. If I feel well and strong, I can sing the part now in the same way as I have always sung it, because my thought is the same and thought produces. Whether I have a little more voice or less voice, what does it matter? I can never lose my conception of a character, for it is in my mind, and mind projects it. So there is no reason to lose the voice, for that also is in mind and can be thought out at will. Suppose I have an opposite character to portray, the elegant Don Giovanni, for example, and drawing himself up and wrapping an imaginary cloak about him with the old well-remembered courtly gesture. His face and manner were instantly transformed at the thought of his favorite character. He turned and smiled on us, his strong features lighted, and his whole appearance expressed the embodiment of Mozart's hero. You see, I must have lived, so to say, in these characters and made them my own, or I could not recall them at a moment's notice. All impersonation, to be artistic, to be vital, must be a part of oneself. One must get into the character. When I sing Iago, I am no longer myself. I am another person altogether. Self is quite forgotten. I am Iago, for the time being. In Paris, at the Sorbonne, I gave a series of lectures. The first was on this very subject, the identification of oneself with the character to be portrayed. The large audience of about 1,500 contained some of the most famous among artists and men of letters, and Maurel, with hands clasped about his knee, gazed before him into space, and we knew he was picturing in mental vision the scene at the Sorbonne, which he had just recalled. After a moment, he resumed. The singer, though trying to act out the character he assumes, must not forget to sing. The combination of fine singing and fine acting is rare. Nowadays, people think if they can act, that atones for inartistic singing. Then they yield to the temptation to shout, to make harsh tones, simply for effect. And the famous baritone caricatured some of the sounds he had recently heard at an operatic performance with such gusto that a member of the household came running in from an adjoining room, thinking there must have been an accident and the master of the house was calling for help. He hastily assured her all was well, no one was hurt. Then we all had a hearty laugh over the little incident. And now we begged to be allowed to visit the atelier, where the versatile artist worked out his pictures. He protested that it was in disorder, that he would not dare to take us up, and so on. After a little he yielded to persuasion, saying, however, he would go up first and arrange the room a little. As soon as he had left us, my friend turned to me. What a remarkable man! So strong and vigorous, in spite of his advanced age. No doubt he travels those stairs 20 times a day. He is as alert as a young man. Doubtless he still has his voice, as he says. And what a career he has had. You know he was a friend of Edward VII. They once lived together. Then he and Verdi were close friends. He helped coach singers for Verdi's operas. He says it was a wonderful experience when the composer sat down at the piano, put his hands on the keys, and showed the singers how he wanted his music sung. Early in his career, Maurel sang in Verdi's opera, Simone Boccanegra, which one never hears now, but it has a fine baritone part, and a couple of very dramatic scenes, especially the final scene at the close. This is the death scene. Maurel had sung and acted so wonderfully on a certain occasion that all the singers about him were in tears. Verdi was present at this performance and was deeply moved by Maurel's singing and acting. He came upon the stage when all was over and exclaimed, in a voice trembling with emotion, "You have created the role just as I would have it. I shall write an opera especially for you." This he did. It was Othello, and the Iago was composed for Maurel. In his later years, when he seldom left his home, the aged composer several times expressed the wish that he might go to Paris just to hear Maurel sing once more. It is very interesting that he was led to speak to us as he did just now, about mental control, and the part played by mind in the singer's study, equipment, and career. It is a side of the question which every young singer must seriously consider, first, last, and always. But here he comes. Again protesting about the appearance of his simple studio, the master led the way up the stairways till we reached the top of the house, where a north-lighted room had been turned into a painter's atelier. With mingled feelings we stepped within this modest den of a great artist, which held his treasures. These were never shown to the casual observer, nor to the merely curious. They were reserved for the trusted few. The walls were lined with sketches, heads, still life, landscapes, all subjects alike interested the painter. A rugged bust of Verdi, over life-size, modeled in plaster, stood in one corner. On an easel rested a spirited portrait of Maurel, done by himself. My friends tell me I should have a larger studio, with better light, but I am content with this, for here is quiet and here I can be alone, free to commune with myself. Here I can study my art undisturbed, for art is my religion. If people ask if I go to church, I say no, but I worship the immortality which is within, which I feel in my soul, the reflection of the Almighty. In quiet mood a little later we descended the white stairway and passed along the corridors of this house, which looks so foreign to American eyes and has the atmosphere of a Paris home. The artist accompanied us to the street door and bade us farewell in his kindly, dignified manner. As the door closed and we were in the street, my friend said, "A wonderful man and a rare artist. Where shall we find his like today?"